Hello, everyone. So, I'm also starting a Divine Feminine series just for us Divine Feminines. So, again, it will be in the same format as the Divine Masculine series that I'm doing. It will be below 10 minutes, and I'm hoping this will help you to delve deeper into your journey. So, the topic of discussion today would be the initiated Divine Feminine, why our journey hurts before it heals. So remember, guys, the twin flame journey begins in fire. Okay, that's how we feel when we first connect with our divine masculine, and often when the connection happens in person, you feel this burning. It's not even desire, it's not even need, it's beyond that, and that's how the initial stages of meeting your divine masculine is. We just feel so much heat. And why is it that it hurts so much? So that's why let's begin the first part with what I would call the sacred burn. Why the divine feminine is the first to bleed. Remember, guys, the twin flame journey begins in fire. Like I said, the first time you meet your DM, it's a coming of home feeling, passion. You want to do everything for him because it's like you're meeting again after a gazillion lifetimes, right? So, why is it that we get hurt the most? Or that's how it looks like, right? Like we get hurt the most, or we're getting hurt the most. And so the divine feminine, as the divine feminine, we are the one who feels the piercing absence, not the passion, remember, the piercing absence when the separation period starts. You feel him, you remember him, you know him, but when you reach out, he disappears. So it's kind of like a mirage kind of situation, you know. So remember, guys, the pain is ancient. It's not from yesterday, it's not from the day before yesterday, but rather since time immemorial. So it's not a personal, hey, I need to, it's something, it's due to my own patterns, or this is how I am in relationships. It's actually beyond that, and that's the reason why often trying to figure this out the 3D way tends to backfire. So you got to look at it this way: the pain is ancient and not just personal. What happens is that when there is absence from our divine masculine, it activates generational feminine coding. The memory of lifetimes where we had loved our divine masculine so much, but our divine masculine was not yet ready. So it's more like a bittersweet, it's kind of like an oxymoron. It's like we feel our divine masculine soul deeply, but yet we are not able to do 3D stuff like holding his hands or touching his hands, or doing something that is so simplified because of how complex the connection is. So you would be asking questions like, why do I sense love in its purest form, yet feel its most bitter in the absence of the divine masculine? Because remember, guys, our soul chose to awaken through this longing. As much as, we may want to rewrite our path, or we might want to not go through uh, this line of getting into sacred merging, union with one's divine masculine. But on the soul level, this was the path. The path was clearly shown to us. to awaken through longing. So remember, guys, longing cracks the shell. It softens the ego. It births the psychic within you, the spiritual um, goddess within you. It tends to soften you up so much that you come to a point that you are in a state of full surrender. So remember, the fire of missing him is not meant to destroy us divine feminines. It is actually meant to reveal who we are. And I've worked with thousands of clients. And one thing I would say, especially with my divine feminine clients, is that you would all agree with me on one thing. After meeting your divine masculine, your life has changed for the better. Your psychic gifts have awakened. Things in your life has changed. You have become a much more full version of yourself, holistic version of yourself. So in the past, you may have been procrastinating stuff, or you may have been afraid to connect deeper within. You might have been afraid of your past, your wounds, toxic patterns. But once the DM comes in, you actually start getting rid of all of it. Even dating becomes different, Initially, some wounded feminines might date out of spite, but in reality, after meeting our divine masculine, I'm talking about a real twin flame journey, you will not be able to even think about another person in a romantic way or in a relationship kind of way. It's impossible. Excuse me. So this is what being a divine feminine constitutes. And our role here on earth, reconnecting with our divine masculine, is through a place of yearning, learning, and growing. And when you remember these three things, you'll realize desperation and yearning are two very different things. In fact, yearning is a higher form of vibration because you are in a place where you are kind of just surrendered and you're like wishing, hoping. And if you can go past that stage and go into a state of full surrender, and when you start seeing separation as an illusion, you crack the codes even deeper. You crack the shell of your human self even more to reveal who you are on a soul level. So, the traditional role of the divine feminine on the twin flame path is traditionally, most of the time we tend to remember first as the divine feminine. And in very rare cases, the divine masculine tends to awaken first. That is due to your own soul plan, soul path, mission related reasons. But in most twin flame connections, it's the divine feminine who is more spiritually attuned from the start. So we tend to receive signs, synchronicities, and inner guidance. We feel the emotional truth that overrides surface level rejection. We tend to feel the emotional depth of the connection through delving deeper and not avoidance, which is what our divine masculine does. So this is not because we are ahead. It's because, like I said, our soul, as the divine feminine, volunteered to be the torch bearer. So we lead the energetic union. We hold the flame, even when our divine masculine runs. This is the sacred burden of the feminine. We carry the light until he's ready to see, and the light can feel unbearably heavy, intense, and painful. So there are three wounds that awaken our power. So, as the divine feminine undergoes all this, meeting and separation, we go through this, what we can call a trinity of pain, and each is an initiation. So the three are: number one, the wound of silence. When he does not respond, you meet your own inner void. So, as divine feminines, we may have lived our whole life not being able to deal with this kind of silence or rejection. And for those who have a relationship history, or generally how you interact with people, when someone, doesn't respond or avoid, you kind of react in a certain way, which is the 3D pattern. But when our divine masculine doesn't respond, we feel the inner void very deeply. So, what happens is that the silence forces us into divine listening. So, it's no longer about his words, but we tend to activate the gift of our intuition, telepathy, and higher guidance. So that's the beauty of it. In the wound of silence, we actually activate our divine gifts. So it's no longer about 3D 3D actions. It's more about soul level actions to determine where we are, who we are, and how we are evolving. Number two, the wound of rejection. When he says, no, I'm not interested, I'm never ever going to talk to you again, you are just not for me, I don't see you that way. As the divine feminine, we find the yes within, because this awakens self-worth codes. We begin to know our value apart from his recognition. We learn to say, I am lovable even when I'm unchosen. And that's the important part of self-realization our divine masculine inspires to embody. So it's all about self-worth codes that gets activated. So that's the reason why, rejection is actually the first part of your twin flame union codes being activated. And often, um, if there is no kind of a rejection from your divine masculine, something, to bring out something within you, then often it's not even a twin flame relationship. So these kind of things is what gives away it's a twin flame connection to begin with. Thirdly, the wound of abandonment. So when the divine masculine leaves, we tend to become our own home. We start creating the space for us. So a lot of divine feminines I have observed, I have a lot of dependency issues, codependency issues due to major inner child wounds, abandonment at a very young age. So when the DM abandons us, we start to become our own home. And this opens the portal of inner reparenting, healing generational wounds, and anchoring energetic self-belonging. This is when she stops waiting and begins rising. So remember, guys, each wound becomes a sacred threshold. So that is the power of being a divine feminine, because we are alchemizing all of this pain and realizing the divinity within us. So the alchemy is that from a maiden, we become a priestess. So when we cross that through the fire, we no longer need to be chosen. We no longer need to be entertained in the way a 3D relationship expectations is about this and that. You could just Google that up. Because as a divine feminine, we have chosen ourselves finally. So the divine feminine's heartbreak alchemizes into clarity. We start to see the game of illusions ego, and karmic cycles. And our mission is that our gifts awaken and we tend to heal, channel, teach, create in whatever aspect of your life. There's a kind of radiance where our inner frequency shifts from seeking to sovereignty. We become free and compassion. Not only do we forgive our divine masculine, but we forgive ourselves too. And this is when we set ourselves free. So this is the very moment the divine feminine becomes the priestess, not because of our divine masculine, but because of the soul we have become when he is away. We have embodied this sacred version of ourselves that we have finally remembered. So the healed feminine often heads towards healed union. And I've talked about it in many of my discourses that often when you are unhealed, when you're wounded, and if you get into union, it will be a temporary union and there'll be many separations that follow. But when you are healed, the union is also healed. So you may think your transformation is separate from him, but energetically, everything you transmute in yourself reflects in him. As you heal your inner child, he softens his defenses. As you embody purpose, he begins questioning his own. As you choose peace, he feels safer in your vibration. This is why the divine feminine must rise before reunion. Not to get him back, but to become the woman his soul has already committed to. So this is what an initiated divine feminine timeline looks like. So the first phase is longing, feeling the soul, but not the man. There's a heart opening. Then there's grieving, where there's mourning, there's illusion of loss, and then surrender. And then there's remembering, awakening, latent gifts, ancient gifts, and then there's soul realignment. And then creating, birthing your mission, heart, healing, magnetism, and finally embodying, living the truth, not choosing it, becoming the union. So this is where you prepare the space for your DM to re-enter. So that's why this is not a linear path. It's actually a spiral. You may revisit each of these phases again, but with more wisdom and less pain. So finally, what must you know as the initiated divine feminine? Remember, you're not behind. You are ahead of the timeline. You're not too much. You are actually very radiant for the current version of himself. You're not waiting. You're preparing the world for the union that is going to follow. Remember, you're not broken, you're being refined. So let your divine masculine find you where you have blossomed, bloomed into the best version of yourself, not where you are wounded, deprived, and desperate. So that's why, guys, I've started the first episode of this Divine Feminine series as something to bring you into your sacred light and not to be lost in your own path, in your own journey. Remember, being a sacred feminine, being a divine feminine in a twin flame journey is a gift. It's one of the rarest gifts because before your divine masculine, who you were, and after meeting your divine masculine, who you become, you will see it with your eyes. If it was a novel that you were writing, and if you write about yourself, and if you read through the pages, you'll realize every single action of our divine masculine has only birthed a better version of ourselves. Never actually, swayed our path away or destroyed our potential. No. But of course, karmic connections do that. So there's a thin line between karmic connections and twin flame connections. So it's always good to have a check done if you're on a twin flame journey. And the method I use is via the Akashic records and the multidimensional records as well. With that, guys, I hope you guys have enjoyed this mini discourse, and I'll see you all again with another discourse. Take care, and if you guys need more help, you guys can always book a session on my website. All right, see you all again.